Hi, and welcome to Amy's Opinions. I'm here again today with my daughter Maggie,
Hi.
and today we're going to talk about the 4th of July. Woo! So, every American loves the 4th of July. Why do we love it, Maggie?
It's our Independence Day
But why do we really love it? We have fireworks, we have festivals, we have music, we get
barbecues.
barbecues, days off, family gets together. That's a lot of fun. We party.
We get to blow stuff up.
Exactly. So let's talk about why we really like the 4th of July. Why is it so important that, we've had all of these 4th of Julys for how many years? Over 200 years?
Yep. Over 270, I believe.
But why is it that we like the 4th of July so much? Is it because of the parties? Is it because of the festivals? Or is it because we're actually celebrating our independence? And do we know what celebrating our independence really is? So, Maggie, why do you think the 4th of July is so important?
Because it marks the day that, we got our independence from Britain, and it's the day that we celebrate being known as a free nation away from Britain.
Okay. So, the very first 4th of July was when we ratified and everyone signed the Declaration of Independence. That was in 1777. So, we've had 248 4th of Julys.
So I was wrong about the over around 270, but
248 4th of Julys. That's a lot of 4th of Julys. Do you think that people who celebrate it now celebrate it as much as we did 248 years ago? 245 years ago? 200, 100. I mean, look at what we do.
I don't think it was celebrated the way that we do now 100 years ago, because different times we have easier access, I would think, to the type of firework technology we have. Queuing seems to be a lot more popular, but I could be wrong about that because, wasn't there 100 years ago?
Okay, but why was it such a big celebration? Let's go back even further than the 4th of July. Let's go back to when the United States was colonies of the British Empire.
You mean when they taxed us so much that we dumped their tea into the harbor?
Yes. So one of the big things that we rebelled against was taxation without representation. So for the people who, oh yeah, I know that chant, taxation without representation, blah, 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 blah. What that meant was we had government in another continent taxing us, taking our money, our wealth, our food, our cotton, our, anything that we produced, and they would tax it. And they would take it, and instead of leaving it where people were working and getting this money and getting benefits from it, the majority of the benefits went over to a small nation that we were under their control.
And that small nation refused to let us have any representation in their parliament. And they figured, because one of their reasonings for why they increased the taxes was because of the French and Indian War, and because they bailed the colonists out, therefore they had the right to tax the colonists more for the war than the regular citizens, because I know at the time the economy wasn't doing well. I guess the reserve that they had at the time was low, and they needed to raise money somehow to replenish their economy in Britain. So their solution was, well, we helped the colonists out in that war, so we're going to tax them more than we're going to tax the people on the homeland, because we didn't help them out of a war, we helped the colonists, so therefore the colonists should be grateful that we helped them and should be willing to pay these taxes. But we're also not going to give them representation to argue why they should or should not be taxed. If we go back even further, we're going back to Jamestown.
Why did the European people come to North America? Because there are already peoples here.
European people came to North America for freedom away from the kings of Europe. One of the freedoms that they would gain would be religious freedoms, because this was during the time of the Protestant Reformation, when all the different denominations of Christianity came out and people were rebelling against the Catholic Church and the Catholic Church's rules, because this was during a time where they're like, oh, in order to get to heaven, not only do you have to follow Christ's teachings, but you have to pay us extra money to secure your spot.
So I'm going to stop you right there. One of the things you just said was for religious freedom, correct? What's the 4th of July about? Gaining independence and becoming free.
I guess, yeah,
So,
but that's not what the 4th of July represents for us. It is one of the reasons why colonists came to the US,
okay.
because yeah, they would gain that religious freedom, but the reason why we have and celebrate the 4th of July is because we became an independent nation away from European superpowers.
I'm going to tie this all in together, I promise. So, one of the reasons why we came from Europe to the North American continent, to the Americas, to the colonies, was for religious freedom. Another reason why we came is Europe was overpopulated. There wasn't enough room for everyone. There's a lot of disease, there was just a lot of crowding.
Well, that's also because they didn't know how to clean up after themselves, and they weren't very sanitary because, during the time of the ancient Romans, people were considered to be cleaner than in medieval times. Yeah, but it was coming out of medieval times, so their cleanliness was still coming from that. People, they weren't bathing as often as they should. And even if you look at like Latin America and their tribes, like the Aztecs were considered to be very clean. They bathed daily and regularly. Europeans
Were filthy.
didn't do that, and that's part of the reason why diseases spread as quickly as they did and were as damaging to Europeans as they were.
Okay, so bear with me. So we came over here for religious freedom, for space, to have more farming land because we needed more food, to have more land, to be able to spread out and grow. So then you fast forward, you have the French Indian War. And let's look at it. If we're fighting a war and we're helping another country out, shouldn't we expect to have them pay us back some money for the resources that we use for them?
Yes, but I think what was irking the colonists wasn't that they were being necessarily taxed more, but they were being taxed more and they weren't gaining representation into parliament. So they were having no say in what was happening to them, and they didn't have a representative from the colonies go and say, hey, you can't do this. And it was also because at that time, we were still in the original 13 colonies considered to be part of Great Britain.
We were. Now, we know why we came over. Religious freedom, land, space to grow things.
The 3Gs, God, gold, and glory.
God, yep, exactly. God, gold, and glory. I'm sorry, I'm saying that. I'm trying to say gory instead of glory. So that's why we came over. In a sense, that was a freedom from oppression that we had over in the European nations because we didn't necessarily have a freedom to expand. There wasn't the resources. We didn't have the freedom to celebrate our religions the way we wanted to because of the strict rules and the prejudices there. And the glory comes from conquering a new land. It's a new space, making it your own. When I say conquer, not necessarily saying we're conquering the people that were here, because initially they were trying to work with us. That came later when the European settlers were kind of jerks. Let's face it, they're kind of assholes towards the Native American people. And the American people have historically been assholes to the Native American people, the people that came from Europe, because they're taking over their land. But back to my point, because I'm digressing.
Yeah, I still am struggling to see how this is going to tie into everything.
Key word is freedom. 4th of July means we were independent. We gained our freedom from the European nations. So, sorry, our dogs are outside and they're knocking on the door trying to get in so they can roughhouse in here. So just bear with us. So the colonists at the time, they were tired. We had the Boston Tea Party where they threw a bunch of tea in because the teas were being taxed so much. That's when Americans started drinking more coffee, which really wasn't good at the time. We had people who were saying, no, we're not going to pay these tariffs. We're not going to pay these taxes. This is ridiculous. This is not what we're doing. Our money, our supplies, our things are not going to go over to Europe. We're not going to feed the big government. We should have our own government because we're so separated. Because it was a journey to get across the Atlantic Ocean to get here. It wasn't always a safe journey, but it was a journey. It took weeks. So the 4th of July is about when the colonists came together with their leaders and they said, enough is enough. We're developing our own country. We're going to sign all this stuff over and we're going to send a representative from us to England to say, hey, peace out. We're not with you guys anymore. It's an independence. It's a freedom from tyranny. That's where I'm coming in. So we started that process when we started colonizing because there was tyranny over there. There was restrictions over there. We came over for God, how we wanted to have the freedom to worship how we wanted to worship. We came over for gold, the resources that were here that we couldn't access over in Europe because it was too crowded.
They didn't treat their resources that they had well. They completely deforested. The UK area used to have a ton of forest. So I think it was also they were overusing the resources that they had, not necessarily overcrowding. Like, yes, the island that England is on was probably overcrowded, but I think it's also they were using the resources
in a wise manner.
correctly. They were overusing them.
Right. And then the glory, a new area that no one had explored. You're right. We came over for God, gold, and glory. But we didn't want someone, some overlord, some king, some random person that we don't have access to. We can't see. We can't send someone to talk to him and say, hey, this is what we're going through. Help us out or don't help us out. Telling us we had to give all this stuff to him. Everything that we were doing went to the monarchy. So we said, enough's enough. They're fine. Sorry again, dogs. Enough's enough. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And we're become a new country. One of the British generals was our first president. He was a high-ranking general in the British Army. George Washington defected and became a United States citizen.
He didn't technically defect because he had already fought in one war for Britain, didn't sign up to fight for them during the Revolution.
Right, but he
So
became
it's
a
not
United
so
States
much.
citizen versus staying with the British.
Yeah, but he didn't really defect. It wasn't like he moved from the British side during the Revolutionary War, like to the colonist side, like Benedict Arnold did from colonist to British.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You're right. I see where you're coming from. So when we have the barbecues and the music festivals and the gatherings, back in the colony days, it was hot to cook inside. You don't want to cook inside. You're going to go and you're going to gather and you're going to cook outside. Hence the barbecues. The fireworks. Fireworks have always been celebratory. Sorry, I have a hard time saying that word. But they're also in remembrance of the war that we fought to gain our freedom. There's a lot of explosions and gunpowders. Look at our national anthem and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air. So with that, that's one of the reasons why we do fireworks is to commemorate and honor those that fought for our freedom. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we worked very hard 248 years ago.
49.
Sorry. To become free. Incredibly hard. We had people sacrificing. Our armies weren't able to clothe themselves. They weren't able to feed themselves. There was a lot of strife. At one point, it didn't look like we were going to gain our freedom.
That's when the French stepped in and helped.
Exactly. Excuse me. So my challenge is to anyone that watches this, anyone that celebrates the 4th of July, look at where our country is going.
Taxed.
We're back to being taxed to death, just like we were during the revolutionary periods. We have state taxes, local taxes, federal taxes. And where are those monies going to? Are they going to our country or are they going to other countries?
Mix of both, but they really shouldn't be going to other countries unless we're paying them back for their assistance, or we know that they're going to be paying us back for our assistance.
Exactly. What else do we have? We have politicians that are in service year round and they're making it careers. That's exactly what we revolted against.
It wasn't set up for career politicians in any of the 3 houses. It was supposed to just be you were in and you would step down.
And are those politicians, do they really truly know what their constituents are going through?
Nope, because they're old or they're way too rich to know what the majority of their constituents are going through.
So when we celebrate the 4th of July and the future 4th of Julys, let's remember the sacrifices our founding fathers made to give us our freedom. And why are we going back towards the same system that over 200 years ago we fought so hard to get away from. You know, the 4th of July is about our independence from tyranny. It's about saying, hey, the gold we find, that's ours. We're going to use it on our people, the people that are here. We're going to celebrate God any way we want to. We're not going to say, hey, you're Muslim, you. Hey, you're Catholic, you. Hey, you're Jewish, you. Hey, we're not going to judge people based on their religion. You have the freedom to choose your religion and celebrate it how you want. Does that mean you can have Sharia law here in the United States? No, you have to go by the laws of the local people.
Separation of church and government.
That was very big for us to do, was separate church and government. We don't have a Church of England. We don't have a Church of the United States. We're allowed to celebrate how we want to celebrate. So this 4th of July, when you're shooting off your fireworks,
Blow stuff up
blowing stuff up
legally.
legally, not going and getting things from outside state lines or
Causing
reservations.
forest fires.
Exactly. And when you're having your barbecues and you're getting together with your families and you're celebrating the fact that we left a tyrannical system and we gained our freedom. We gained our freedom to have the glory in finding the things that we found and discovering it and owning it. We got the gold, our resources to feed and clothe our peoples. We have the freedom to choose how we celebrate God, how we religious God. You know, how we celebrate our faith. So when we're celebrating that, let's look to the future and what our future looks like. Because right now, we're being taxed up the yin yang. We have career politicians. We have all kinds of things that are pointing back to, we're backsliding to this thing that our forefathers stopped and said, no, this is not right. Thank you and happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.